this is Kelly Sadler, and this is this week's Politically Unstable. I am joined today with Peter Navarro, who was a senior advisor to President Trump, served all 4 years in the White House, working on China policy, trade policy, manufacturing, bringing back jobs to the U.S. We're honored to have you today, Peter.
So the clean little secret here is that Kelly Sadler was one of my colleagues in the Trump White House and did an absolutely outstanding job. Couldn't be happier to see how she's been able to help the Washington Times with its op-ed page, which I have said many times and I totally believe is really the best commentary page now in the country. So kudos,
Well, thank you
Ms.
so much.
Sadler. Cream rises to the top. What I can say.
Well, Peter writes for us weekly, and he also writes for his Substack, which is peternavarro.substack.com. Peter, what is it again? peternavarro.substack.com. I got it right?
Yeah, peternavarro.substack.com. What I do there is all things Trump 2024, the campaign, a lot of stuff on communist China. And then on Fridays, I leverage my macro financial markets experience and do kind of like what's going on in the financial markets from a MAGA point of view, mind you. So, yeah, anyway, thanks for the plug.
So this week you wrote a column on the VP that Trump should select, and you had 5 different criteria of characteristics of what this person should be. So can you kind of brief us on exactly what Trump should be looking for in a vice president? Because a lot of names have been battered around.
Yeah, and a lot of them quickly fall out of these criteria. But let's be clear, it's up to the boss. He's the one that's got to make the choices here. But what I think I have one of the most unique perspectives, because I was like on the inside all 4 years. So I was only one of 2 senior advisors in the policy area who was with him from the campaign all the way to the end. And so let's go through some of the checklist. I mean, first of all, you want loyalty to Trump himself. I mean, one of the problems we had in the White House is there's just a lot of snakes in the grass who were backstabbing each other and backstabbing Trump. And then on the way out the door, they'd go to like CNN or but whatever. You don't, the boss, he don't need that. Okay. But it's not blind sycophancy to the man. It's like, I think one of the reasons I survived, Kelly, was I was willing to just tell him whatever I thought was the right truth. He'd press me, I'd hold my ground, and he respects that. So he wants loyalty, but not blind loyalty. So that's number 1. Now, number 2, I think, is really at the top of the list. It's loyalty to the MAGA
Exactly
agenda.
right.
You had just so many people who came into that administration who thought they had been elected and thought they knew better than Donald Trump. To refresh here, what we were trying to do in Trump land was the Buy American, Hire American, the end of the endless wars, the secure borders, the fair trade, the tough on China. And you just had, if you looked at the State Department, you had Rex Tillerson come in. The first conversation I ever had with him during the transition, he said, Peter, that trade stuff, I'm not exactly on board with that. And he proved that to be the case. You had just a series of disasters at the National Security Council when the FBI entrapped Mike Flynn and got him out of there. And that was a grotesque weaponization of the FBI. Don't get me started. But that left us with globalists like McMaster and then Dr. Strangelove, John Bolton. And then you go inside the White House, the National Economic Council directors. First, Gary Cohn of Goldman Sachs, Larry Kudlow then of Wall Street. I had to fight those guys every single day to push forward our tariffs or trade agenda. So you can't have somebody who's going to be in the VP who's going to be disloyal to that agenda. That rules out a lot of people right now. I mean, Nikki Haley would be at the top of that list, but that's only one of many reasons. I think you really want somebody who understands how the policy process works.
Yeah.
When I got in there, it was a really steep learning curve. But what the reason why that's important, Kelly, is that as you push whatever your executive orders, your memos through the policy process, and those are the two most important tools a president has. It goes through this deep state bureaucracy, and if you don't know how to basically roll over that bureaucracy and move stuff to the finish line, you're never going to get anything done. And I think President Trump's second term, he'll move a lot faster than he did the first term because he knows the perils of that, but he's got to have somebody he can rely on as a VP to do that. I think fourth, you need somebody who's really good at the media. I mean, it's going to be a firestorm. The minute President Trump says, that's my pick, that person is going to be just vetted with a fine tooth comb, and just the media, legacy media is going to try to just destroy that person, whether it's a woman or a man. It's just going to be, so you need somebody who can handle the media. Like when I was again in the White House, Kudlow, Mnuchin, these guys that go, oh yeah, let's do TV, and they'd go on like Sean Hannity or
Yeah.
Stuart Varney on Fox Business, and it'd be like a love fest. I made a point of always like being willing to go on the CNN or MSNBC or ABCN, those
Yeah.
shows where, like, in a heartbeat, your career's over, right? I mean, and I offer in the Washington Times column two examples, like Sean Spicer. I mean, he ruined his career the first day he was there with his gaffe about the largest audience. And the funniest thing is like the feckless fool Mick Mulvaney. I mean, that guy is just, he's a clown show. But the worst clown show was deadly serious when he gave a briefing as acting chief of staff on the Ukraine issue. And he after the president had almost got him totally self-extricated from the impeachment issue, Mulvaney plunged him right back in by saying stupid stuff. So, and then the last thing I think, look, the one thing I like Mike Pence a lot. He did me some solids while I was in there. I think he was a good soldier, but what he did, Kelly, at the end was unconscionable. It ruined his political career. But what Mike was really good at was he was a tireless campaigner,
Mhm.
and he did really well in the debates. I mean, when Tim Kaine came at him foaming at the mouth, Pence handled him he just handled him like he was like a barking dog. And then, I joke in the column, the Democrat fly notwithstanding, hassling Pence with Kamala Harris, he pretty much destroyed that arrogant thing in the White House they call Kamala or Kamala. You decide. So those are the five things, and it's going to be. I mean, it's up to him, but that's what I think would best serve him well. And that's going to be hard to find. That
Yeah, I
is
was just
going.
going to say, does anyone fit that criteria?
Um, I don't want to go down that path now because, first of all, if I say it, then it's my idea, not his. And second of all, if I say it, the legacy media's heads will explode, and whoever I might recommend, it'd probably be the end of them. But I think that's the filter you want to look at. I mean, I could certainly rule certain people out, starting obviously with Nikki Haley. I mean, the problem with DeSantis, among other things, I'm not sure he's loyal to the man. He's demonstrated that. He seems sort of MAGA, but his background doesn't, that's not where he came from. But he's not good at the media. He's
No.
certainly not good at the media. And as for being a tireless campaigner, he really didn't distinguish himself there. Tim Scott, I mean, look, that to me is Tim's a nice guy, okay, but he's not MAGA, and he's just not MAGA, and I don't know if he's up to the media task. He's slick, but I think he'd pretty much get eaten alive. So anyway, there's others in there, but like I say, I don't want to I don't want to go down too far down that path, but those are the five things: loyalty to the agenda, tireless campaigner, master of the policy process, and there's the kind of things I think that the boss needs to look at.
Well, it'll be interesting to see who he finally names. I mean, there's just so many different names going out there, from Tulsi
Yeah.
Gabbard to Marjorie Taylor Greene to Sarah Huckabee Sanders. So who knows? Who knows if it's going to be a woman or man? But it really is up to the president to decide who best works with him. And I think the points that you touched upon is A, being loyal, but B, being loyal and being for the MAGA agenda are kind of this one and the same. You can't start fighting against the policies that the president has campaigned on, like
Yeah.
building a wall
Yeah.
at the southern border, like getting out of
Yeah.
the JCPOA, like getting out of the
Yeah.
Paris Climate Accord. You can't. He campaigned on those things, he delivered on those things, but you can't have internal disagreement in a White House trying to sabotage those campaign promises. So I agree with you 100% there. Now let's
No.
move to Michigan. We just had the Michigan
Sure.
primary this week.
Yeah.
Obviously, Trump won. Nikki Haley should be getting out of the race anytime now, probably right after Super Tuesday. It's just getting embarrassing at this point. However, looking at the general, Joe Biden seems to have a Michigan problem with the radicals on his side of the party, the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian sect, the youth. But there was also an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago talking about Trump's strength in the Rust Belt, and with auto workers and with blue collar Americans that he tapped into in 2016 when he won Michigan, that still remain there. Can you kind of talk to me about, we know that Joe Biden's got, the big boss, union boss, basically endorsement, but what about, the workers, the union guys
Sure.
themselves that are putting the cars together?
Yeah, and again, let's put in a plug for the Washington Times op-ed page because I think it was 2 weeks ago, I had a piece in there discussing the
Mm-hmm.
UAW endorsing Joe Biden, the Sean Fain, the leader of that union, and why Fain is so out of touch with the rank and file, and it's likely, um, it's certain that Trump will sweep the rank and file, and the reason why that is so, and why I think he's gathering more and more strength in the Rust Belt, is because what Biden has done is basically continue the destruction of America's manufacturing base, which is primarily located in the Midwest, in the Blue Wall states. It was a destruction that began back in the 70s. It really took on acceleration in 2001 with Communist China's entry into the World Trade Organization. And the only 4 years we've had with any respite from that was Donald Trump. And the best way to think of it, Kelly, is think about the difference between an electric vehicle over here and a internal combustion engine over here. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what Joe Biden has done with Sean Fain's collaboration, basically, is create a set of policies and incentives to replace the internal combustion engine cars, the fossil fuel cars, with these electric vehicles. Now, what's the difference between the two if you look under the hood? The difference is the fossil fuel cars have this whole web of parts starting with the engines and drivetrains and all of that stuff. And where could and were they used to be made? That was all throughout the Midwest. Whereas the electric vehicle car, the whole thing is basically metal sitting on a battery. And China has cornered the market on lithium battery production because it's basically cornered the market on lithium supplies worldwide. And the batteries are dirty to make, and it doesn't have environmental pollution controls, and it uses cheap labor. And so, what we learned from China's first wave of stealing our jobs was that when parts go over to China, uh, everything goes over to
Yeah.
China. So here's the punchline. Long setup to the punchline. Nobody knows better than the workers at the UAW and the parts suppliers throughout the Midwest, that they're living on borrowed time, that Joe Biden has basically put them out of business. And the only consolation UAW members are going to have are higher wages for a little while,
Mhm.
after which they're going to go the way of the United Mine Workers, which I analogize in the Washington Times piece, where John Lewis basically traded off mine mechanization for higher wages and wound up that being the end of the United Mine Workers. So that's what's going on. The problem with the elites, the problem with our labor leaders, is they think that these rank and file people, just because they shower after work rather than before, are stupid. They're not stupid. They understand exactly what's being done to them. They're pissed off, and they see Donald Trump as their not only their savior, but the only one who understands their dilemma and has any sympathy for that. And so that's, I think, what's going on. Certainly in Michigan, which is the epicenter of car automobile production. But you have to understand, a lot of that supply chain is dispersed throughout the rest of the Midwest, whether it's Ohio, whether it's Wisconsin, to a certain extent, Pennsylvania. So there it is.
Well, I mean, he's got a shot at Michigan, and we know if he gets Michigan, I think the rest of the Rust Belt will fall like it did in 2016. But I'm gonna
Don't forget. Let's remember what happened in 2020. Okay, in Michigan, in Detroit, um, that was a situation where God knows how many ballots were stuffed through means which we would love to get to the bottom of. Wisconsin, particularly around these university towns,
yeah,
Ann Arbor in Michigan, it's Madison in Wisconsin. There's just a lot of things you have to be concerned about with respect to election integrity. And one of the things that really has to happen quickly is for the RNC to get its act
yeah.
together, because normally they would be the ones doing all of they're the ground troop operation, all of that. But right now, that ain't happening.
Yeah, well, it could be happening soon. Ron is stepping down after Super Tuesday. So we're going to have new leadership there. Hopefully, there'll be some organization in terms of we got to play the game the Democrats are playing. As hard as it
Yep.
is for me to say, but we got to go after the early ballots, the absentee ballots. Ballot harvesting where it's legal. We've got to get that ground game together, and as well as challenge what the Democrats are doing to the electoral process. Right, it's state by state. That was half the
Yeah.
problem
Absolutely.
in 2020s. You had COVID,
Yeah.
and you had state legislators changing the way people voted, that all favored Democrats. So,
Yep.
so now that we're out of the COVID haze, hopefully there's lawyers, there's fighters that are going to go after these things, starting with the RNC. But who knows? Who knows? I kind of like, you were in the White House for 4 years working on tariffs, trade policy, buy American, hire American. Uh, what you know you guys had to leave in 2021. If you were to come back into, have another 4 years at it, what would you like to finish up, or what is on the agenda that needs to, kind of be moved forward from kind of where you left off in 2020?
Well, if you think about the working class Americans, which that was my remit in the
Hmm.
White House, and that's the center of Donald Trump's MAGA base. If you just focus on their economic, social, and political welfare in this country, what'll make our country safer and more prosperous. Um, there's two things you have to do. First, one is you got to secure that border
Hmm.
and begin mass deportations. The numbers of illegal aliens that have come across the border in the 3+ years of the Biden regime are staggering.
Mhm.
And from an economic point of view, it's this mass suppression of wages, which hit black and brown and blue
Mhm.
collar Americans disproportionately hard. And then you've got the whole other thing that comes with it, the drain on the tax base from all the services, the crowding into our major cities that's creating crime on the
Mhm.
ground, the importation of drugs by the cartels, sex trafficking, the awful trafficking of children. It's just, I mean, countries by definition are countries that have recognizable borders that a nation has the right to defend and regulate the flow of immigration into. We've always been a country that have welcomed legal immigrants, and the at least the civics books tell you that when you do that, you want to welcome people who are going to, on net, improve the country and not divide and suck off the tea to that country, right? But
Mhm. Yeah,
I
no.
mean, so you start with that. Um, you certainly got to deal with the ongoing economic and military aggression of communist China.
Mhm.
And then I think you have to do that in a way which does not get us into these kind of endless wars that Joe Biden is hurtling us towards, whether it's with Iran over Israel and Gaza, or communist China over the Taiwan Strait, or Russia in the Ukraine. I mean, you gotta, I mean, it was a remarkable period for 4 years. I mean, they laughed at us when we came in there. I was the crazy crank economist. Donald Trump was the guy who was going to blow the world up. And we wound up having the best 4 years of inflationless prosperity, no wars, calmness. And it was, that's the advantage that Donald Trump has going into this
Mhm.
election. People remember what he did and they want it back.
Yep. He has a record to serve on. He is an incumbent.
Yeah.
So, kind of shifting gears a little bit, can you update us on your legal case? I know you've been, the DOJ is coming after you. Can you give us kind of an update of
Sure.
where you're at?
Sure. The big picture here is that the J6 Unselect Committee, as President Trump called it, uh, issued a congressional subpoena to me. I failed to comply with that subpoena because President Trump invoked executive privilege. It was not by law my privilege to waive, and I had and have a duty to the constitutional separation of powers and the doctrine of executive privilege to do what I did. That led to a contempt charge by Congress and an indictment by the Department of Justice. Now, what's interesting here, Kelly, is two things. I'm the first senior White House advisor ever to be charged with this alleged crime. And I say alleged because for more than 50 years, the Department of Justice said it wasn't a crime, that because of the constitutional separation of powers, Congress doesn't have the authority to subpoena folks like me who are
Mhm.
considered to be the alter ego to the president. And this goes back to the days of Washington, Jefferson, the John Jay Treaty. I mean, it's written in stone. So my case is shaping up to be a landmark case in constitutional law regarding separation of powers. And it really, we need to resolve this because Congress can't weaponize Congress for partisan ends. Otherwise, that's going to further degrade our democracy. Where this stands now is that I've been convicted. The judge sentenced me to 4 months in prison. Um, Unlike Steve Bannon, who was convicted of in similar circumstances, I was not released on bond pending appeal. In other words, when Steve was convicted and sentenced, the judge said, "Look, this is probably going to be reversed. We grant you release. You don't have to go to jail until this thing's appealed." And that's the standard.
Mhm.
If it's an open question that that could be reversed or dismissed, or lead to a new trial, then certainly you let somebody out. My judge did not do that. Okay. So, in addition to our main appeal on these big issues, which is my mission now to fight that and settle good law on it, we filed a separate motion on Friday for release pending appeal. And the brief basically argued exactly why there were not just one substantial issues likely to lead to the conviction going the other way, but a number of them. And so that's where things stand. It's on a fast track. I thank the appeals court for recognizing the urgency of the matter, given that I could be in prison in a month. But we may well hear something no earlier than mid March, but hopefully by the end of that month, and we'll see where we're at. But either way, I just want people to know that the reason why I'm standing here facing this is because it was my duty to do what I did. I was obeying the law by failing to comply with that subpoena. And there's really a battle that we're going to fight in the courts on this. And people should hope I win that case, because our democracy will be better off. Presidential decision making will be better off if the court indeed rules in my favor.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, because this is a huge case. And we know we've been seeing the weaponization or lawfare against President Trump with all of his indictments on these foolish charges. And then they're going after everyone who worked for him, were associates of his, to discourage or discourage people from joining the MAGA movement. But you're staying strong. You're doing the right thing. Executive privilege is a very common thing that's used by both Democrats and Republicans. And it's pretty much well understood. Unlike Steve Bannon, you were actually in the Oval Office. So we wish you the best case on your appeal, and hope all of these charges are dismissed.
All right, you keep doing what you're doing, Kelly. You guys are kicking it pretty good there at the Washington Times.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me this week. I really appreciate your insights, and stay safe and keep those articles coming to us every week.
Yeah, peternavarro.substack.com. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.